Hello students, this is week number 4 and now we are discussing the last lecture of this week number 4, that is the lecture number 5. Now we are going to discuss in this guidance and counseling course a very important and relevant topic, that is the eclectic counseling approach. We have discussed the non-directive counseling approach and directive counseling approach. Now we are going to discuss eclectic counseling approach. What we are going to discuss in it? This is the highlights of the lecture. We will introduce the topic, then we will try to understand the characteristics of eclectic counseling and what procedures are adopted in eclectic counseling. We will discuss, and later on there are limitations or the shortcomings of the eclectic counseling. We will highlight on these also. Advantages we will also explore, and then we will conclude our lecture later. Let us start with the introduction. The chief advocate of this type of counseling is Thorne. Thorne pointed out that there are wide personality differences and no single theory of personality can justifiably encompasses all phenomena. There can never be a single technique where all the positives can be included. The problems of the individuals vary both in content and intensity, and an approach suitable to one individual need not necessarily suit another individual. This is the key aspect, or this is the basic criteria, basic principle taken by the Thorne in introducing the concept of eclectic counseling. Eclectic approach of counseling is best characterized by its freedom to use whatever technique seems to the counselor to be most appropriate at any particular time. Total freedom is given to the counselor. Eclectic approach empowers the counselor to pay proper attention to the individual differences. Psychology also focuses attention to these differences, and it seems entirely logical that individual differences be given due importance in selecting the appropriate counseling techniques. Psychology also supports this point of view. Individual differences are there, and these individual differences are quite open, quite clear. We need to pay attention to these individual differences. That is why a single technique in giving counseling to students cannot be an objective criteria. This counseling recognizes that there are positives and negatives associated to each theory of the counseling, and no single approach should be considered final for implementation in all circumstances. We have just discussed in previous lectures non-directive counseling and directive counseling, and we have discussed all the positives and negatives of that. Thorne basically gave the idea that why not we are implementing a combination of these two theories. So if the situation demands the selection of collective approach, then they should not hesitate to use it for achieving the objectives of the counseling. The objective of the counseling are more important rather than selection of the approach. If one approach is more useful in achieving the objective, then the counselor must feel free to adopt that approach. Here, significance of the approach is less important because these are the approaches, and the very basic purposes of the approaches is to achieve the objectives of the counseling. So we should realize the significance of the approaches in the light of the objectives of the counseling. According to Thorne, eclectic counseling refers to deliberate attempt made by the counselor to combine directive and freedom as the situation demands. Whatever situations are there, we can combine both the methods collectively and provide the counseling. Now there are certain characteristics of the counseling. Now we will discuss that. The methods used by the counselor depends upon the professional competency, skill and experiences of the counselor. Here the counselor has to demonstrate skills, has to demonstrate competency, and on the basis of that skill and competency, he or she has to decide which approach may be suited to resolve the issue or solve the problems of the students. The counselor considers the appropriateness of the method, keeping in view the need and the requirement of the clients and the problem. There are many clients whose problems are different in nature. Then we have to take a selective decision in order to solve the individualized problem of the students. A strategy cannot be utilized. Same strategy cannot be utilized to all the clients or all the students. So flexibility is an important characteristic feature in eclectic counseling approach. Okay, we are giving freedom to the counselor to accept or to adopt whatever approach he or she would like to, at whatever stage he or she would like to use. Modification in the techniques utilized is possible as per the demands of the situation. Concept of modification means flexibility is there. Okay, we can modify the approach even in the middle of the counseling process in order to suit the objective of the counseling. Another characteristic feature is that the freedom of the choice and expression is open to both counselor and the client. Here, nobody is dominant or nobody is passive. In directive counseling approach, counselor is more important. But this approach giving freedom to individual, giving freedom to the client, and giving freedom to the counselor also. Methods are modified in accordance to needs and requirements of the client for achieving the desired purposes. Whatever method the counselor is using, he is free to change as per the needs of the students. Feelings of comfort are essential both on the part of the counselor and the counselee. If comfort level is not there, rapport is not there, free and frank environment is not created, then it will be difficult to express freedom on the part of the student to explore their world and to present their opinions and to express their emotions related to the problem. That will be difficult to do the counseling. So it pays concentration to both intellectual and affective aspects of the client personality. We are gaining the insight about the characteristic features of the individual, and we are also giving significance to their emotional aspect, that is freedom of expression, and their attitudes, their interests and the desires are given significance in eclectic counseling approach. The decision about to start with either non-directive approach or directive approach is taken by the counselor based on the nature of the problem faced by the client as well as the personality characteristics of the client. So from where the counselor has to start, either he or she has to start from the non-directive approach of the counseling or start counseling by using the directive approach. It depends upon two characteristic features. Number one, characteristic features related to the individual and the characteristic features related to the problems or the nature of the problem, type of the problem, gravity of the problem, intensity of the problem, and personality characteristic features and the behavior and the approach adopted by the individual, that is the student characteristic features or the client characteristic features. So both subjective and objective aspects of the counseling relationship are emphasized in eclectic counseling approach. We are giving to the rationality significance to the rationality and reasoning concept, which calls upon us to take the view on the basis of the personality characteristic features of the students and also given significance to their emotions. Another characteristic features of the eclectic counseling is that emphasis is paid to help solve problems of the counseling rather than strictly adhering to any specific approach of the counseling procedure. As we already discussed this point, the significance is giving to the counseling's objective rather than the approach with which we are rendering the counseling. The validity of the result is determined by the skill with which any method is used. It is basically related to the role of the counselor. Here, role of the counselor also becomes very important, very important. His professionalism is very important because it is up to the counselor to take the decision by which approach he has to start the counseling process. He has or she has to analyze the characteristic features of the individual and talk about the problems of the students and problems faced by them. The critical factor is not what method is used, but how effectively and efficiently it is being used. It is not a matter of discussion whether you are using the directive counseling or the non-directive counseling. The matter of discussion or matter of contention is that what is the effectiveness or efficiency of that method which is being used by the counselor in order to solve the problems of the students. Both the counselor and the counselee observe the experience of mutual confidence and faith in a relationship. Mutual confidence and faith is very important in this also, because we are giving freedom to the students, and sometimes the dominance of the counselor is also accepted to certain extent. So this is it is based on the mutual relationship of the client and the counselor. In eclectic counseling, the counselor is neither too active nor too passive. In other words, his position or her position is not well defined in advance, rather depends upon the particular situation. Whether the counselor is going to play an active role or at which stage he has to demonstrate the passivity in their behavior, it is not decided in advance. At the start of the counseling, counselor, as per the need of the situation, as per the demand of the situation, has to take the decision either to play an active role or to play a passive role, and giving more significance to the wish, desire and actions of the client. Now we are talking about the procedure of eclectic counseling. In this, now in few stages, we are going to talk about the procedure, the eclectic counseling. There are 5 stages. Study of the personality characteristics of the client, number 1. Analysis of the problem, number 2. Selection of technique, number 3. Securing effective conditions for counseling, number 4. And terminating the counseling situation at number 5. Let us analyze these points in detail. What we are going to do in the stage of study of personality characteristics of the client. For this purpose, the counselor can conduct interview, extensive interview of the client. After developing rapport and showing confidence and trust in him or her, case history may be collected from parents, teachers and other concerned persons. The collection of information is provided to the client to improve his or her self-understanding. This is the first step. Characteristics, study of the characteristic features, personality characteristic features of the student. So, when the person is in the process of conducting the interview, many ideas are checked by the counselor about the characteristic features of the individual, and there are many areas from where where the counselor get the information about the characteristic features of the students. At second stage, analysis of the problem. First of all, we have analyzed the personality characteristic features of the client. Now at second stage, what we are doing in this eclectic approach of counseling, the next stage is to study the problem deeply, keeping in view the different aspects associated to it, so that objective appraisal of all causal factors may be determined. Why the problem arises? What is the nature of the problem? What may be the root cause of that problem? Need to understand, need to analyze the problem from different angles. If the counselor is really interested in giving the adequate or reliable counseling to the student. The second stage is analysis of the problem. Then interpretation of the available information collected by the counselor leads to select most pertinent technique to suit the individual need of the client. He or she may start with non-directive counseling approach and may switch over to the directive counseling approach, or vice versa, in order to achieve the purpose of the counseling. Selection of the technique. Once you have made the analysis of the characteristic features of the individual and you have discussed all the angles of the problem, now the counselor takes a decision based on these two characteristic features, which approach he or she has to adopt. Either he or she has to start with the non-directive technique and switch over to the directive technique, or whether they have to start from the directive technique or switch over to any technique or any other criteria, whatever taken by the counselor. Fourth stage is securing effective conditions for the counseling. Effective conditions for the counseling. This is very important, because until and unless we create effective conditions for the counseling, we will not be able to achieve the objectives of the counseling. The conducive atmosphere is needed for the counseling, because until and unless we create an environment where we are rendering the counseling process, the counseling will not be effective and efficient in nature. And establishing good counseling relationship with the client is highly essential. A rapport must be developed between the counselor and the client. Respect and regard, emotional association, and the confidentiality of information should also be taken by the counselor in order to develop these aspects or good relation between the counselor and the counseling. The counselor should also actively involve the client in implementing the counseling processes. He should give significance to the respect and regard and individuality of the client, and ensure that he or he is also in a position to take the measures to resolve his or her own problem, because these problems belongs to the student, and every problem has its solutions, and definitely they will also demonstrate some sort of solutions which they consider best. So this is securing effective conditions for the counseling, that is the conducive environment. In such counseling environment, the client achieves emotional release and insight after his perceptions and attitudes about himself and his situation. If environment is conducive, psychologically safe and secure, then the person feels at ease, and it gives a positive feeling to him. He is emotionally satisfied and confident in taking the insight from the characteristic features about the problem and about himself. Finally, the client makes objective self-decision and modifies behavior and solve problem. Modification of the behavior or solving the problem is the key of the counseling process. And objective decisions are made when we are making students or the client realize their potentials and developing the ability to analyze problems from all angles and leading to change their behavior and learning the skill of solving the problems, termination of the counseling situation. That is the last stage. After developing the client's insight to understand his or her problem in the light of its associated aspects and ability to take his decision, the counselor, in consultation with the client, takes a decision to terminate the counseling situations. Now, the decision of terminating the counseling is also a mutual. If both are agree, then there is nothing wrong in taking the decision to terminate the counseling. Every approach, whatever approach we are implementing, has its positives and the negative associated to that. In coming slides, we are going to discuss the shortcomings of the eclectic counseling, and we will also learn some positive aspects of this counseling. So it is extremely difficult to combine the elements of directive and non-directive counseling together and implement to achieve objectives of counseling in its true spirit. This is a serious shortcoming of this eclectic counseling approach. To what extent you are able to assimilate the elements of the directive and the non-directive counseling and achieve the objectives of the counseling, it totally depends upon the counselor's wish and his desires. So this is the serious beginning. Another shortcoming is that it is also not clear that how much freedom must be given to the client and how much control must be exercised by the counselor in the process of eclectic counseling. It is not clear, not decided, can never be decided. How much freedom must be given to the client and how much control must be exercised by the counselor. Counselor being a professionally trained person and a client being a less mature person, many times the client may demonstrate the passive attitude and giving everything in the hands of the counselor. It means the total shift is going, or dominant role is being played by the counselor, although we are using the eclectic counseling, but the dominant aspect of that counseling will be directive counseling. Proponents of a highly systematized and unified approach in counseling, such as client-centered adherence, psychoanalytical oriented counselor, and learning theories, do not accept eclecticism as genuine approach to be used by the counseling. So there are many opponents of this counseling approach. They consider it is wrong to assimilate both the types of the counseling and engage in the counseling process, because it is not systematized, it cannot be objective, and it is also against the principles of giving freedom to the individual, either giving freedom to the individual or giving total freedom to the counselor. Critics of eclectic approach of counseling point out that choosing from several systems and techniques result in disorganization or in a mass of inconsistencies. If you are taking many parts from different areas, then it will be very difficult to make a whole of that in a chronological order or in a systematic order, in a sequential order. Overlapping will be reflected and the whole process of the eclectic counseling will be disturbed. Some people are of the view that eclectic counseling is vague, opportunistic and superficial in nature. It is vague, some people consider. It is opportunistic on the part of the counselor to take their decision. If he likes more to the directive counseling, then he will follow that. If he or she likes non-directive counseling, then he will switch over to that. So it is opportunistic and superficial in nature. No concrete things involved in that, as the views of the some people. It gives undue authority in the hands of the counselor to select the techniques of the counseling. Lack of expertise on the part of the counselor may lead to wrong selection of the technique, leading to undesired results. That is important. If the counselor is not serious, not professionally trained, not showing the maturity in his approach, because counseling is a very complicated process. You are dealing with the problems of the human beings. Any wrong decisions on your part can spoil the life of the client or the students. So need to be very mature, very objective, and very systematic in his approach, and demonstrate skills in selecting the decision that may not be possible with all the types of the counselors. There are many advantages of the eclectic counseling. In spite of shortcomings associated to that, this approach is based on many advantages. What are the advantages of this approach? Let us discuss these advantages in coming few slides. Number one, personalized treatment. Personalized treatment. Eclectic therapy provides a tailored approach that addresses the unique needs of each client. When we say okay, this approach suits to the individual problem of the students, it means we are talking in giving the counseling in a personalized manner. A personalized aspect is more important, group aspect is not important. We are dealing with students on the basis of their merit, on the basis of their characteristic features, and on the basis of the characteristic feature or the nature of the or the type of the problems. And students, as we discussed in the beginning of this lecture, okay, there are different types of the students, and all students cannot get the benefit from any one type of the counseling. They have to rely on various techniques which suits to their individual nature, or they are related to their personal characteristic features and the personal problems with which they are associated. Flexibility and adaptability is another advantage of this counseling technique. This approach can be adjusted to meet the evolving needs of the client throughout the therapeutic process. It is flexible, it is adaptable. No single criteria can be applicable throughout the counseling process. If the counselor feels that he or she has to shift from one counseling approach to the another counseling approach, he is free to adopt this flexibility and this adaptability, because the ultimate objective of this counseling approach is to achieve the objectives rather than emphasizing on any particular technique. This is also very important advantage of this eclectic counseling. Comprehensive approach. By integrating various techniques, eclectic therapy can address a wider range of issues and promote holistic well-being. A single method in solving all the problems of the individual may not be applied, may not provide fruitful results. So comprehensive approach is possible if you are dealing with many problems and resolving the issues of the student. As we can take the examples of the teaching methods, there are various methods of the teaching. If we are exposing the student by using the different methods of teaching, then we are making more clarity as far as the concept, as far as the application of that concept is concerned. In the case of the eclectic counseling, we are basically using the comprehensive approach. There are many positives associated to each and every approach, and those positives are being utilized for achieving the objectives of the counseling. Potential for effectiveness. Research suggests that eclectic therapy can be an effective approach for various mental health conditions. If the person is mentally unhealthy, or or having many problems of stress, anxiety, and serious kinds of depression or personal problem associated to any educational, vocational, or any other aspect. So there are researches which have been conducted, and they have shown that this eclectic therapy is more effective as compared to the other approaches in resolving the mental health issues of the student, because anxiety ridden individual, stressful individual cannot take the right decisions. Sometimes we have to provide them support, and sometimes we have to give freedom to him to express their idea. The potential for effectiveness is another aspect. Addresses complex issues. There are so many complex issues which cannot be solved by any one approach, and these complex issues can be solved by the other approaches. Increased client engagement. When clients feel understood and the therapy is tailored to their needs, they are more likely to be engaged in therapeutic process, which can lead to better outcome. So client engagement basically is enhanced in this process of the eclectic counseling, draws on strength and different approaches. Eclectic counselor can leverage the strength of various therapeutic models while minimizing their weaknesses, leading to a more comprehensive and effective treatment. Various positive aspects are associated to various approaches. Negatives can be removed and positives can be implemented in eclectic counseling. Can be more effective for certain clients. There are students who are basically are in a position to take the advantage of this counseling. For some individuals, particularly those with deep-seated issues or those who have not responded well to a single therapeutic approach, eclectic therapy can be more effective in facilitating positive change. Let us conclude our discussion. Eclectic counseling refers to a deliberate attempt to combine direction and freedom as situation demands. There are positives and the negative associated to each and every approach of the counseling. The selection of the approach must be based on the need and requirements of the student as well as the situations. If we follow these principles in our counseling approach, then this counseling approach can be very fruitful for the student and can resolve their matters and make them self-actualized person. With this, we have completed our discussion. Thanks for your patience hearing. God bless you all.